Humans as we know today, or in other words, Homo sapiens, have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and just recently, like literally not even 30 years ago, all this technology has exploded and expanded and has inundated us with hyperstimulation. Think about it. Prior to technology, and especially if you're born like mid-90s and earlier, you grew up a portion of your life without all the technology and hyperstimulation 24/7. When you were kids, I guarantee you, if you're that age, when you were kids, you had to stay outside all day and entertain yourself with your friends, play in the dirt, climb trees, ride bikes. You had to go create your own fun. But like kids that were born after 1995, I would say, or maybe, let's say 2000 and earlier, those kids they know really nothing else other than these video games and smartphones and tablets and all these social media platforms that are built and engineered to capture your attention and stimulate the hell out of you. Like throughout human history, like Homo sapiens, think about the most stimulation we had, like especially even before modern times, like when we were still in tribes. For most of our existence, we weren't civilized. We were in tribes, like hunter-gatherer tribes. How do you think what was their stimulation? Eating fruit. If they found like fruit that was really sweet, I would imagine that's pretty stimulating. Having sex, but they mainly had sex to reproduce, and they didn't live for sex like we do these days, where that's pretty much what we want all day, every day is sex, sex, sex. But back then, the stimulation was very limited. I guess, sunsets and sunrises and waterfalls and just nature is stimulating, that's just how it is. It's stimulating to our eyes. But that's the most stimulation they're getting. I mean, I guess people in their tribe, they're attractive. That's pretty stimulating, I guess. But think about our brain was like programmed and grew through those circumstances of, relatively speaking, it's a low amount of stimulation. So if you compare that to how we live today, where if you're a man, you have unlimited access to, well, men and women actually, you have unlimited access to porn and sex through your screens, and your brain isn't adjusted to being able to see sex and all these different partners unlimited. Like your brain is only used to maybe one partner in a lifetime, because that's what we mainly did, and you're just used to your small tribe. Now you can just swipe on Tinder unlimited and see a new partner and talk to 10,000 new people a day if you really wanted to. And you can go to a porn page and watch a video of a girl fully exposed, every inch of her body, and you can watch sex. And if you get tired of that scene, you can just go to a next one and see a different girl with a different body, and another one and another one, and your brain is getting hyper stimulated, and then you become numb to the real world. And social media does the same thing. People express themselves online in an unnatural way that they wouldn't do in real life, and we become hyper stimulated, reading other people's stories, engaging with other people, and it may be a front, it may be inauthentic to who that person is, but nonetheless we are experiencing people in another light, and then in real life we are totally different. And that's because we're not adjusted to this new way of living and all this technology that's growing by the second. Our brains are still ancient. Our brains are still programmed from those early days when we were hunter-gatherers. Our brain, it's like, relatively speaking, technology is only 30, 40, 50 years old max. like the hyper-stimulated technology is not even 30 years old. And we've been on this planet as a species for 300,000 years. So it's like a very, very minuscule fraction of our existence have we been this hyper-stimulated. And we wonder why, we're suffering from all these mental health problems and suffering from just a bunch of social issues, depression, suicide, anxiety, all these things that didn't exist throughout most of our history. All we cared about was hunting, surviving, and protecting. Like, that's all we cared about. And we didn't have depression and anxiety and all these different things. So that's why all this stuff is creeping up on us, because our brains weren't adapted for this life of hyperstimulation, especially from a young age now. Like, kids, instead of going outside and digging holes and climbing trees and getting dirty and being out in nature, most kids are inside playing video games and watching tablets and watching all these different TV shows that are made for kids, and they stay inside all day and they're hyperstimulated. And let's say you just throw all the technology away and stick them outside and say, hey, go play outside. They'd be like, what do I do? How do I play outside? These bugs are scary. The dirt, I don't want to get dirty. And that just goes to show you how technology has changed everything. And I think life is a little bit better if you can live more naturally and try to get stimulation. And I would say, it's okay to still use some of this modern stimulation, social media, stuff like that, but have a healthy balance in between. It's not it's not super extremely hyper stimulation all the time. You take a break and sometimes you just go for a walk through nature. That's very stimulating. If you don't have technology and you don't have unlimited access to porn and Facebook and Instagram, and you actually are just, you live without technology, you go out into the woods and you see a very beautiful tree, or you see beautiful animals or waterfalls, it's super stimulating. Or you go to the beach and watch the sunset or the sunrise, that is super stimulating. You will feel so good and feel like a feeling you've never felt before. But when you're desensitized by this hyperstimulation from your phone, your laptop, tablets, and all that stuff, if you're digitally stimulated all the time, you're desensitized to the natural stimulation that we're adapted to. And I think that makes us more anxious, more depressed, more sad, more confused, more lost than we've ever been. And those are just signs that point us, that are trying to tell us to go back to how we used to be. I wouldn't say completely. Obviously, there's no going back, but just to manage it a little bit better and not get so consumed into this new way of living that we forget how we've always been. So it's just something to consider, and those are my thoughts on technology and how it affects us. Obviously, I didn't go too deep into it, but something to think about.